ladies and gentlemen. I give you Caroline McKendrick.
Good evening, everyone. Just bear with me for 2 seconds. I will try and share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
We can hear you well tonight. You've got much better.
I'm using Martin's office and he's got top of the range equipment. I wish you could see it. I'm so impressed. I got two screens and everything, so I feel like I'm professional now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, go to slideshow at the top. And then it should say something like start. Where is it? There you go. Fantastic. Over to you, Caroline.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. The talk I'm going to do tonight isn't the same as the usual ones that I would do, where I would have several different stories from Somerset. Today, I am specifically looking into the George Hotel. So, where is the George Hotel? Let's have a look at some maps. So as you can see on the first one that we've got here, it's a large area in Somerset itself. It's in between Chard, Ilminster, Martock, Beminster and Yeovil kind of area. So it's bang smack in a little town called Crewkerne. It's in Market Square and it's right in the centre. There has been a George adjacent to the Market Square since at least 1541. Let's have a look at a couple more of these pictures so I can narrow down where it is. So again, this is narrowing it down a little bit more. You can see this is the A358, I think, coming in from Crewkerne. And this is the A30 going out of Crewkerne towards Chard. And it's on this junction here. We'll move to the next one. This is a little bit more zoomed in. And what you can see here is the A30 coming in, or A358, sorry, from Yeovil. And this road here takes you out to Chard, the A30. So if you have a look, this is the building here that we want to look at. And it goes around the corner on a jaunty angle, and it's a very strange setup. It's an incredible building. The footprint is huge. And I just wanted you to get some kind of awareness of the size of this place. So the next screen, we've got a little bit more that I can show you. So again, this is the Market Square here, and this is the George Hotel. It comes off at this angle like a dog leg. Don't know if you can see, and then it comes off down this way here as well. So that's the George Hotel. We'll have another couple of views from the outside so that you can see. Again, that's zoomed in. So this is the front. This is how it stands today. This is what it looks like. So you have this massive, impressive entrance that used to be where the stagecoach used to go through and come round the back. And then the building that you see here was Lloyd's Bank, but I think originally on my research, I would actually say that this was part of the George Hotel itself. Round the back, if you go, you can see the old water tap that's still there, that they used to pull the water for the horses. And I'm guessing that some of the buildings in the next picture would probably have been maybe used for some of the stagecoach and the stable area, if we just go and have a look. So this is taken from, if we go, remember the old picture where I said there was that lovely, impressive archway through. This is taken just to the side of the archway, up on some steps, and it's looking at this dog leg that goes back. And underneath the George all has hotels. This is a second entrance into the George Hotel, which we'll talk about at a later date. And then these across the top are bedrooms. And the next view you'll see, it goes round the corner still, all the way down to bedroom number 10. And that's over some hairdressers there. This is the George on this side as well. So it's the bar in the front here. Then you have the kitchen area, toilets downstairs, and all this section at the top is the ballroom. So what is the history of the George? Now I'm going to give you an abridged version today because it's so vast. I don't want to get bogged down in too much of the history. So as the George predates the Hanover dynasty with King George's, local historian M.G. Willis Watson, when writing of Crewkern's old inns in the 1930s, was certain that the building was so called in honour of England's patron saint. This is probable, although another possibility is that the inn was named after George Plantagenet, Duke of Clarence. George Plantagenet was the brother of Edward IV and Richard III. He played an important role in the dynastic struggle between the rival factions of the Plantagenets, which is now known in history as the War of the Roses. George Plantagenet was Lord Mayor of the Manor of Crewkern for some years prior to his attainder and death in 1478. George was privately executed at the Tower of London on the 18th of February 1478 by the tradition within the Bower Tower. But soon after the event of his execution, a rumour started to spread that he had been drowned in a butt of Malmsey wine. If this was true, this rumour, then there would be some poetic justice, and it would be slightly ironic in having an inn named after him when he drowned in a vat of wine. The inn's location is found at the intersection of what was the main road from Exeter, Plymouth, London, all the way up through. It was the old Roman Silchester Road and the modern A30. It had a confluence of arteries connecting to the Bristol and English channels, and it had been a vital element of the history of both the George and Crewkern itself. During historic research into the George, evidence was unearthed to suggest the probability that the George may have originally been located on the site of what is now the White Hart in East Street. So if you have a look at this picture here, I'm stood on the corner opposite, you've got Market Square up here, and this white building here, which I would love to go into for an evening's investigation, is called the White Hart. And on plans, this showed that this was the original footing of where the George Hotel was. A deed dated on the 5th of December 1674 between Joseph Cussins and John Bonville, both prominent Crewkern names of the period, mentioned the building heretofore called or known as the George Inn, but now called or known as the White Hart. Willis Watson reports that despite the local legend holding, the White Hart hadn't been a coaching inn as early as 1499 as stated. In fact, it was impossible, as stagecoaches were an innovation of the late 17th century. But the George's continuing status as a post stage may have given rise to the understandable confusion on the matter. It is in connection with the posts that the first distinctable individual in the George's history emerges, and distinctable he certainly was. Thomas Hutchings, sometimes spelt Hutchings, became postmaster in 1617. He acquired the George 2 years later in 1619, when it was still in East Street in the present building of the White Hart. Hutchings was a determined man of considerable organised ability, and Hutchings is credited by transport historians as the originator of England's first profitable postal service. So he was the first postman, I guess, in history in England. For a fuller account on Hutchings' innovations, you can take extra reading of something called The Postmaster of Crookhorn, which is what what Crewkern was called originally. So that's Crookhorn. That's in the Somerset magazine dated December 1996. So Thomas Hutchings died in 1633, and he left the inn to his two sons, Edward and Joseph, who would carry on in the family tradition as postmasters. Edward eventually moved to London, but on his death in 1657, he left the George Inn to his two sons. As Joseph Hutchins, Edward's brother, is named a ratepayer within the deeds in 1658, it's assumed that he operated the inn on behalf of his nephews, who were still minors at the time. Through much of the 17th century, the building was known as Hutchings Inn, and the connections of the family with the postmastership continued until at least the Cromwell Civil Wars. At some time between 1658 and 1674, ownership of the George Inn passed from the Hutchings family. By 1694, it had become part of the property belonging to the manor of Easthams, and it appears that this is when the new, larger inn was built on the present site of the George Inn in Market Square, probably to accommodate the emergent stagecoaches. And this was when the old name, the George, was readopted. The manor of Easthams was inherited in 1736 by Caleb King. He was known as a grocer in Crewkerne, and following his death in 1759, ownership of the George becomes rather muddled with multiple owners and tenants alike. For the purpose of today's talk, I don't want to get too bogged down with the building and its owners and tenants past this point and distract from the history of the hauntings, but I wanted to give you all a brief outline on how the George arrived at its current plot today. I do have a full history of events and every single owner and tenant up to present time if anybody would like any more information. In the info I'm leaving out, there were several Georges that owned this property, and this is important to remember for later, and I will go into that. After refurbishments in 1882, the frontage of the building had extensive works to its current look. In 1887, extensive internal renovations took place, and again in 1992 to include Lamplighters Bar. So that's this area here. I wasn't sure what was in there beforehand, but it was when I went to work there in 2014 with a friend. It was called Lamplighters, but I believe it might be called the Sports Bar now. So there is a book written about the George Hotel. It's called The Inn at the Crossroads, and it's by Patrick Carroll. And I used this and the local historic society and British newspaper archives to get the history that I've given you today for the property. So my research goes from 2012 to 2022. So this is 10 years of information. None of the information that I'm going to give you today is in the public domain. All the information has come from 10 years of research, interviews with witnesses, and personal investigations within the George Hotel. Therefore, I ask that you do not use any information that is supplied today without exempt permission from me prior to using it, please. So the areas we're going to look at that has haunted reports. Witness stories, room by room. So thank you very much to Christian Lander to help to get this floor plan. It's the most difficult thing I've tried to do. I had it in 3 sections because it's so large, and Christian helped to make it look a bit better than it was. So I don't have photographs of all of the areas that I could locate in time because my computer crashed. And I'm going to just let you see some of the floor plans and try and point out the rooms that it is that we're talking about. So this is the first floor up. The ground floor would be Lamplighters over here. And you've got the main bar, the dining room area, the kitchen and the toilets in that order on the ground floor, but this is the first floor. And this isn't named, but this is the ballroom with the balcony. So the entrance would come up the steps into the ballroom itself. And this is an area above the servery that's it's a balcony, and I'll show you some pictures of that in 2 seconds. So this is the ballroom itself. These windows have now been filled in. They're solid and the curtains are still up. You'll see that in a minute with the second picture that I've taken from a still, but this was during the wedding scenarios set up when Frank had owned the hotel. And this is a still looking the other way from our infrared camera. Sorry how grainy it was. It was taken from the screen. So this is the balcony. Now, I've got Frank's information I'm going to give you first in his interview. He said an old lady's presence is felt within the ballroom, on the balcony, and also just out of the balcony's entrance on the floor above. So there is another door that you can access to the floor above, which is up where his private quarters would be. So when he sees this lady, he actually doesn't physically see her, but he has a strong smell of a mimosa type perfume that's linked with her presence. He could sense when he was walking through her or near her. He states that he had cold spots in the corridor. So up out of this balcony into his bedroom and his flat area, he could sense her through that area and in the private flat. And also to the room on the right, he could smell her perfume, often around these areas. So other witnesses, which is previous managers, BD, which is what we're going to call this lady, she was walking through the ballroom, and it was in this direction that she was walking to come from her flat when she was the manager down to the bar. So when she was walking through the ballroom, she was looking in these windows on this side, and she could see a reflection of an old woman walking next to her. She was in her 60s, mid-weight, with short brown hair, and she was wearing light blue clothing. The woman appeared agitated, and she raced down the ballroom, running towards her. BD realized there wasn't anybody outside the window, because as I showed you in previous pictures, it is a floor up and it is quite high. So there's no way there was any entry to the outside of those windows. It was 20 foot up over a pavement. I also had an interview with a patron who was a salesman who was staying there, and he was using the ballroom because the Wi-Fi was better than in his bedroom. And he looked up because he could hear footsteps, and a woman of the same description was running at him in the ballroom while he was sat working on his laptop. Well, as he recounted his story to me, you can hear the fear in his voice. He said at no chance ever again will he ever go back to that hotel. It frightened him witless. So there is another accounted detail for this ballroom as well, that somebody had taken this lady home in the car with them after a visit, that they looked up after a conversation about the hauntings there. They got in the car, drove home, looked up at the rear mirror, and they could see this lady of the same description sitting in the car behind them. They pulled over on the side of the road and had an absolute hysterical fit. And then when they calmed down enough, checked the back of the car to make sure there wasn't a stranger there, they got back in and they drove home, but it did leave them very shaken up. Okay, the next room we're going to have a look at is the George suite. So this is the ballroom and this is the George suite, which you have to come out through the door into the corridor and in round. And it's also known as the honeymoon suite. Now this is looking, my back here is against the bathroom, which is also in the haunted reports. I apologize, I haven't got a great photograph with the angles. If anybody wants any photos, I can get access to the hotel at another date, and I can get some more pictures if people wanted to know any more. So the George suite, honeymoon room, and this is Frank's account. People who have stayed in the room have said that it's very active in there, particularly within the bathroom area, but I'm not sure who's haunting the room. They hear knocking, tapping, and sounds of feet walking. Previous managers report, numerous people have complained the next morning on checking out that the bathroom was very active with noises. They heard voices within the bedroom and the bathroom, and they saw shadows walking across the bathroom when the door was open. The next room. So this moves around here. We're coming round again and we're going into bedroom 1. So again, that's next to the George suite. The bathroom's back on or sideways onto each other. This is bedroom 1 here. So this is the bathroom that we're back on, or sideways on. The George Suites bathrooms over here. And this is the door to the hallway. So in room 1, there was no reports from Frank on this room. He had no personal experiences in that room himself. But previous managers have said customers have a feeling that somebody is in the room with them watching. Noises are heard and knocking. I didn't sense anything in that room personally myself. I thought it was quite a pleasant room. Moving up to bedroom 3, which is up on the dog leg out. So this is going to be almost opposite the ballroom, on the same level. So it's 20 foot above the floor. Again, there's nothing from Frank on room 3, but previous managers. A lady in a rocking chair has been seen on 2 separate occasions by 2 separate people, and this was given to the managers on exit from the hotel the night or the morning after. And apparently the bathroom feels particularly eerie in that room, the manager said. So room 6 is the next room. So you've come around the corner, you've got bedroom 3 that we've just visited, and then it goes into another dog leg over out where I was saying it was down towards the hairdressers. So bedroom 6, now this is a very eerie room that I find quite odd, to be honest with you. You have to go in, down some steps into the room sideways. You did used to have access originally in this room, but you have to go in down through like a little corridor and in. So room 6, Frank has said to me that he had a chambermaid that worked for him. And I didn't manage to get to interview the chambermaid in particular, but he and other people that worked with her at the time were all interviewed for this, and they all agreed and said the same thing. So a little girl has been seen in the room, and she was alone, and the chambermaid had a 10-minute conversation talking to the little girl. Nothing sparked any issues or concerns at the time, except that she was on her own in the room, no parents. She was around the age of 8 years of age. She had long blonde hair and was wearing a long white nightie. And when the chambermaid went downstairs and spoke to Frank, she said, "It's not on that the parents left that child alone in the room when they went downstairs for breakfast." Frank said nobody in that room last night had a child, and also they've checked out first thing this morning. With that, the chambermaid said, "F that, I'm not staying here. I can't work here anymore, I'm off." She left at that point. She didn't ask for her wages and she never came back. So I'm guessing that was quite an experience for her. So previous managers, they also have customers that call down on a night and they complain of hearing a child running up and down the corridor outside room 6. They also hear giggling from the child. The lights are continually going on and off during hearing the noises, not only in room 6, but actually in the corridor outside. What I'd like to point out to you, which I haven't pointed out in the beginning, is that Frank never met the previous managers. When he sold the property, he sold it to a chain of hotels and he never met them. So to hear people corroborating stories from one management to another and having patrons making the same complaints for the same areas all adds to the evidence that's based for this hotel. The next room we're going to have a look at, it's room 8. So that's this one here. Now, room 8 was known as Dave's old room. Now, when I worked there, there was a gentleman who was a drayman and he worked behind the bar, and he was called Dave, and he was employed and he stayed in this room. But they've had a rejig of this room because they never had the bathroom here. It was a shower against the wall, and I think they've stolen parts of another room to make it. So it's 2 single beds in there now, and it's pretty eerie when you're in there, to be honest with you. Frank, his detailed reports are the TV would switch itself on and off, and Dave would always complain that the TV would just come on in the middle of the night and go off in the middle of the night. He got so fed up with it, he took his remote control batteries out so that they wouldn't have any impact, hoping that if it was a faulty clicker, then it would remove that problem. Frank's niece never knew anything about this room from Dave at the time, but when Dave left, she came to visit and stayed in the room for quite a while. I think it was about 6 months. The TV used to switch itself on and off with her again, so she removed the plug from the wall, and the TV still used to turn itself on and off. We're now looking at room 10, which is the end room over here. This is directly above the hair salon that I pointed out to you previously. Now, I've interviewed the salon manageress who spoke to me in depth about this. And when I ran an event for the hotel, she came and she stayed in that room that night. I don't know what she experienced. Never got round to having a follow-up appointment with her for that one. But she used to say that she could hear running up and down the corridor, and bearing in mind that the child that's seen isn't that far, and this is the corridor that she would run up and down in, allegedly. Maybe she was hearing the footsteps of that, but they used to go to the pub and say, who's in room 10? They're making so much noise, it's putting us off work downstairs, and they could hear voices and shouting up there as well. Previous managers have said that the staff feel incredibly uncomfortable in this room. This is the one room that all staff say they don't like. Everybody I've interviewed said 10, some won't go in it at all, and some go in it and leave the door open or have to have somebody else when they're chambermaiding attend with them. They say they hear voices whispering in their ears and they feel as though they have been personally touched. Moving on to the main bar area. So this is the main bar looking from the middle of the entrance. So you've come through the archway, and this is the second door looking back at the pub and into the cozy area. And this is the first door just through the archway, looking from the cozy area up through the pub that way. So remember I told you that there were several Georges that had owned the hotel over the years. Well, any manager and any person that's owned the property call the ghost in the bar George. And I never understood why they picked that name and thought it was a bit lazy personally when it was the George Hotel, until I started doing the research. And then when the building moved to its current place, nearly every person for 100 years had the name George. And then the son that it was handed down to had the name George as well. So there were 3 Georges in a row that owned the hotel, which could be why they've picked the name George. So in the main bar area, Frank says there is a joker in the main bar. I never experienced this, but I am apparently, according to Frank, quite terrifying at times. And maybe I put the ghost off and it didn't want to play games with me. I met Frank in 2014 after my husband had cancer and his wife had cancer at the same times, which is how we met each other. And then when my husband passed, I said to him one day, I was really lonely, and he said, come and work with me and I'll keep you occupied. So this is how I became a member of staff within the George Hotel. So when I started working there, I was expecting glasses to get thrown off the shelf at me. They never did. But other people, when they were working with me, I watched, and the glasses, as told to me in the stories, were flung off the shelf. And especially when a new lady started working there. And it was only ladies that George used to throw the glasses at. And he's still doing it now. I spoke to the current manager 2 days ago, and she told me that everything that has been described is still happening today. So also still within the main bar area, previous managers said that glasses on the bar move around by themselves. They've watched them. You know, some might say, is that condensation under the glasses on a wooden bar? But they used to have metal trays and also cloths on the bar for putting the pints on, so people never used to put the drinks directly on the bar itself, but they used to move, and you could see them. You put them in one place and then you come back and they'd be somewhere different. The previous managers also said they hear stiletto heels walking around the bar from the top of the bar down the steps to the bottom, and it sounds as if there's a wooden floor, but as you can see, there's only a wooden floor on the front part of the bar, the top part of the bar. The bottom now has got carpet area, but originally it would have had wood before the renovations from South Coast Inns. So also within the bar area here, picture frames turn themselves upside down regularly on the wall, and also in the dining room, which is up this way behind me. I haven't got a picture of the dining room. I haven't had any stories of the dining room, which is why I'm not featuring it on today's evidence. But this lady did say that the picture once in the dining room turned itself upside down on the wall. Behind the bar, this is the new layout from the bar. Back in the 1700s, or the 1800s in particular, the bar was on this side, and there is some evidence in the history in Crewkerne Museum that shows that the bar originally was over here. And if you look up to the ceiling, you can see the old marks that were there. So behind the bar, knives would go missing that they would use for cutting the lemon, and they never find them. They'll just go missing for days, and then they would appear again. So, you know, some might say that's poltergeist activity. Some might just say it's George being naughty. Now, I've experienced this before. When I've been behind the bar, I used to see a dark shadow walking down here, like a figure. And I would always think that somebody was in the bar when I was closing up, and there wasn't anybody there. I'd go and look and there was nobody. So BD, who was one of the previous managers, saw someone stood by the table near the tree by the door. So this is down here. It was an adult male figure, a black shadow in silhouette, and it vanishes when she looks at it. She's also seen another figure in the same area running across this. So you have the light coming in from the outside of the road, and you have a figure running across here, but it's a different shape, different size, more like an adolescent. Moving on to the cellar. So the only way I can show you the cellar, because my photos that I've got are locked into this laptop of mine that's gone kaput. So this is lamp lighters. You come through from the main road and lamp lighters, and the cellar was through here. So you'd have to get keys, unlock it, go down the stairs. So it's around the corner in there and down the stairs to change barrels. It's pretty eerie as cellars go. I think all cellars are pretty eerie, to be honest with you. There's a different smell. It's darker, it's colder, there's spiders. So it's always going to be the perfect setting for a horror story. But if you want a perfect setting for a horror story, this is it. It's pretty horrible. And it's mischievous. So Frank, in his interview, said in the cellar, he would change the barrels and change the top pressure when the gas has gone. So I'm not sure if a lot of you know about changing barrels, but on the barrel itself, you can change the tap, and then you go to the wall and you would change the top pressure on the wall, and it would then pull up the beer to the level of the pub. Can't explain it any more than that. I'm female and I'm not a drayman. So what he used to do was change the top pressure, and he'd go back up to the pub, and he was changing the gas so that it would pull some more beer through with the correct amount of gas in it. And when he got back up and he'd lock all the doors and go back over the road, the joker, George, or whoever was down there, would turn off the top pressure off of the barrels of beer, or he removed the tap.
Well, so every pub has a ghost. Well, it's not a pub.
Thank you. So he removed the tap, so there is no pressure to feed the beer up to the bar, and this was done on a regular basis. At first, Frank used to think, oh my gosh, am I going a little bit doolally, or is this something that I've done? But it wasn't just him it happened to, it was on a regular basis to all members of staff. And yes, it did happen to me as well. So the previous manager, BD, when she goes down, or when she went down to the cellar, she would always say hello and goodbye and call into the cellar when she went down. And I asked her why she did that. And she said to maintain a good working relationship with whoever was down there, because his mischief was quite upsetting sometimes, and she didn't want to do anything to upset him. So she was trying to keep him on a good, even keel. And she senses that there is a male down there who's playful and slightly unwelcoming. The cellar often floods, and one day she heard footsteps walking through the water behind her. She didn't know who was down there with her and thought that her partner or another member of staff was probably down in the second part of the cellar. So she turned to look, and obviously there was nobody behind her. And when she turned round to get out of there pretty quick, she felt her jacket being tugged. And when she looked back behind her again, there was nobody there. And her jacket was tugged again. And she saw it move this time. And with that, she heard a shh. So another time she was in the cellar with another member of staff, because she wasn't feeling quite so brave that day. She walked down and she could hear voices. And when she called out and said, "Who's there?" again, there was another shh. So she thinks that it's haunted by a monk from the abbey. And she said that she thinks that he used to make bread under the cellar, but there is no supporting evidence for that though. Right, my visits to the cellar. When we had gone in with a team, I think Donna's with me this evening listening, one of my team members. Donna, I wasn't sure if you were with us with the previous group with this one. The monk, we got an EVP come through, and I said, can you tell me who it is that's visiting the cellar, which is against all of ASSAP's guidelines that you're not supposed to call out, but this was when I was young. Anyway, so I said, anybody who's there, and a voice on the EVP was recorded saying monk. And when we asked why he was there, he said, "I'm ashamed." Now, I'm guessing he thought that he'd done something wrong. So I said, "Have you done something wrong?" And money came back on an EVP. I'm not sure of a name that goes with this monk or any further information or why he was in the cellar. History does support abbeys being money rich at the height of their use. Was he hiding some in the cellar? I don't know. I'll explain why I think that the monk was in the cellar for money, maybe hiding it in a minute. I've also had with the group and myself, when I've worked down there, barrel caps from the barrels thrown at us. And I've heard a male whisper, and I've also had the barrels tampered with after changing them as well. Now, why do I think that there's a monk, and why am I putting evidence in this? So there are tunnels that go from the George. So can you remember when I was showing you the first pictures and it went round the dog leg on the bottom of the dog leg, and I said, and that's the second entrance into the hotel? Well, the tunnels go from there. This is the George Hotel, and they go all the way to the Abbey. Now, is this during the period when the monasteries weren't allowed to be performing, when Henry VIII was in office, so to speak? I don't know, but there is tunnels that go all the way there, and it's also linked to the other local pubs in the area. The Crooked Swan has them, Oscar's Wine Bar. So the Crooked Swan is here on the junction, Oscar's is here, and the George is here. But there also is another tunnel that continues all the way out, so all the way out of Church Street this way onto the A30 to go towards Chard, and there's a tunnel that goes out to the old Travellers Rest pub as well. So was there a monk in there hiding his money? Did he steal some? Did he want a better life for himself than the modest one that he had within the abbey? I don't know. But this is the entrance that I was telling you before that has the tunnels that go to the abbey and to the other pubs. It links them all together. But thank you very much for listening. That's my history and my reports of the hauntings within the George Hotel in Crewe Cairn. If you have any questions, I'm ready for you. CJ, are you there?
I'm here, Caroline. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That was wonderful. That was really interesting. You know what? So many people were commenting on how beautiful that hotel was and the rooms were. I think you were blessed to work there. The rooms are so pretty.
It's incredible. I tell you, I did pop in 2 days ago, and the current landlady has put the olive branch out to say, come on in and investigate with us. So when the reason why I say olive branch, when the new people at South Coast Inns took over, the manageress wasn't a nice person, and I can't go into it now, but it left a bit of a bad taste in our team's mouth to continue working there. But now they've got an absolutely incredibly lovely landlady. I'm hoping that we can go back and continue the investigation and the research into this wonderful place. It's just magnificent. It's huge. And until you go and visit, you just can't appreciate how large a footprint it's on.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the case with a lot of these places where you will find certain owners and landlords and landladies more receptive to people coming in and investigating, and that may be based on personal beliefs or even something as mundane as insurance. But it's really good that you found a good one now. That's great. CJ's here now. I'll pass you back to CJ.
That's all right. I was here before. I just couldn't manage to unmute. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Just carry on down for the moment.
Okay.
While you're waiting for questions, there was one part that I haven't actually included, which is the owner's own bedroom and the flat area. I didn't include that at the time, but it is also reported. That's above the balcony area. Frank used to say that a lady used to sit on his bed at night, and he used to look up and glimpse and think that it was a lady because of the mimosa smell of the perfume that was linked to her as well. Obviously, he hadn't spoken to the previous managers. BD, we'll call her. She used to say that she felt somebody on the bed, and her partner verified that as well. The dog used to bark in the corner of the lounge. And also there was an area within the flat where they used to do the washing, and that was also very haunted, and they used to see a black figure walking through there. But yeah, I didn't include it in that because obviously if people want to go and visit and get a haunted bedroom for the night, they can't get into the owner's private area. Sorry, I finished again.
No, it's all right. No, that sounds fabulous. Thank you. It does sound like a building that's got so many different parts of it that are haunted. And yeah, it just sounds absolutely lovely. But thank you for sharing that with us. Let me see. Yes, a lot of people thought it was perhaps amusing is not the word, but interesting and perhaps ironic that the pub was named after a guy who was drowned in a vat of wine. So to have yourself named after somebody who's drowned in wine, that's quite interesting.
I thought it was, especially with him being the Lord Mayor of Crewe Cairn as well. It was quite ironic.
Yeah, definitely. And Ed says Crewe Cairn comes from crick, meaning a hill.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There you go. There you go. We've got so many wonderful members with so many fascinating facts to tell us. Right. Alice wants to know how much is it to stay there. Would you happen to know the current rate?
Yeah, so some of the rooms are £79, and I think it's £85 for the honeymoon suite with the 4-poster bed. But if you have a look on travel.com or wherever it is, they're all on there, the rooms with the prices.
Oh, fabulous. Brilliant. That sounds, and that's actually quite reasonable for a place
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
only one downfall is that there's no real parking. There is a big car park behind, but you have to use money in the machine for that one. So that kind of puts some people off about not having free parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Sorry, Christian, did you want to carry on?
No, I just found that in the past, whenever we went to a hotel, if there wasn't free parking, we'd often go to a different hotel.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
What?
Alice also says, sorry, go on. Did you want to? Sorry, you carry on, Christian. You carry on.
No,
I'll
you
bust
carry
out
on.
now.
I was just going to say, when was the first recording of the haunting? Are there any newspaper stories about it in the past? Any?
There is nothing in the public domain. What I'm giving you today, everything has never been put into the public
Right.
domain.
It's all from the pub itself and from people who work there. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so you're welcome to have, like I say, you're welcome to put this, I will send you the talk to put into your record so that everything's recorded for this pub now, and it
Yeah.
will be in the public domain. But if anyone wants to use the information, please, just out of a little bit of respect, this is 10 years of my research. Could you
Yeah,
just
sure.
ask
Mention
before
right.
using it? Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a quick look through. I was looking at Mark Alexander's Haunted Inns from 1973 because I wondered if it was being mentioned in there at all, but it's not mentioned.
No, there's no mention of it anywhere. This is what we in our team like to do. I'm a little bit crafty like that. I find places that have no history, no recorded history, but when you start looking into the historical research through the newspaper archives, and you can come up with things like murder, suicides, deaths, and lots of history to support famous people and reasons for it being infamous. I can get us in to get an investigation, and then we start researching and taking the information and doing the interviews. So there's never anything for the main places that we go to that will have any history recorded.
Yeah.
Blank canvas, which is what I like.
Do you think the phenomenon's been going on for a very long time?
Yeah, so I mean, that's 10 years that I've been researching it, and I think it was back in the 80s that some of it was recorded, but Frank's only got information from 96, I think, 96 or 94. I'll have to find the information out for you when he bought it. So I think it's 1994 when he bought it. So I can only really go back as far as that, but other people who were patrons have had stories to tell that they've remembered from the times before Frank had them, and you used to get told them when you were pouring them a pint. So this is how I got most of the information.
Anthony Hippersley Cox, his Haunted Britain is, what year was it, 1973, I think, yeah, 73. He says of Crewkern, the main road between here and Chard is haunted. Horses are heard galloping hard, and a phantom fight has been heard between smugglers and excise men. Among them, a wounded customs officer who's heard gasping for breath.
That's outside the Wind Whistle.
Oh, okay, is that another pub or?
Yeah, so the Wind Whistle was another place that had no history of ghosts, but it's got a massive history of highwaymen that would take you from your stagecoach, bring you into the pub, take your money, your purse, throw you in the cellar and slit your throat.
Oh, okay.
I was just about to say the Wind was when you said between Chard and Crewkern, and you said about coaches. Yeah. I was just about to say the Wind was. Yeah.
So that's another one of
up on high up on top of the hill, isn't it? Windwhistle Hill. That's what it's called. But...
Yeah.
How about this one then?
Go on.
In Chard, 1662, a very odd occurrence took place here. On July the 12th, towards evening, 2 suns appeared in the sky. 2 days later, at 10 p.m., 3 moons were seen. Then on July the 19th, 2 suns again appeared. Only in Somerset, hey? But that was Chard. How far away is Chard?
10 minutes.
Right.
So if you carry on up that road that I was showing you with the Abbey tunnels that go up to that Travellers Rest pub, if you continue on that road, it takes you out to past the Wind Whistle and Cricket St Thomas, and then into Chard itself. And then if you carry on straight over the roundabout and up the road, you're at the Chuffs. So the Chuffs is an incredibly haunted pub, which is very much in the public domain, and everybody's heard about it. And I've got
It's in the 73 book by Mark Alexander. He's got a whole section on it.
Yeah, I did a
Chuck-
talk about that one in the last talk on the chest with the
Yeah,
bird found behind the fireplace.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's an incredible
Oh.
place, the George. It's still got so much to give. There is so much there that's unanswered, and you know, if I'm lucky enough that the team and I can get back in there again as a private investigation, I'll be more than happy with that.
Excellent. Is it true that Cricket St Thomas is haunted by a large pink figure with glowing yellow spots that makes
Absolutely.
bizarre noises as it walks through the woods, going blobby, blobby, blobby? Yes,
Yeah, it was Blobby Land. That was
it was Blobby Land, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is it now still there? It was a derelict theme park, last I heard.
It is a derelict theme park, and they have this amazing run because my partner Martin, he does a lot of running and does endurance, and they have what they call the lemur loop, because that's where the lemur house used to be for the animals in when they had the animal sanctuary there. And you would run around this loop, and it's 6K, I think it is, each loop, and then you keep going for as many loops as you can within 24 hours. So he runs past the remnants of Blobby Land, and he says, yep, and went past Mr. Blobby's again every time he'd come back to the beginning of the run.
Another question, serious question this time, not me joking. Thanks for a very interesting talk, Caroline. This is Kieran Farrell. I'd like to know